All right. And we're live. Welcome, everybody. Winging It is a show by Oddbird about web design, development, and our approach to solving problems. On today's show, we're talking about CSS Grid again, part 2. Since the last show had rave reviews, we thought we'd bring it back to answer any unanswered questions. I'm Stacey Cavermo, and I am joined by my fellow bird, Miriam Suzanne. Welcome, Miriam.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing all right. We have layout land in the chat. That's exciting.
Oh, very exciting. I think today's going to be a very fun episode. When we first started talking about winging it, this is sort of exactly what I had envisioned, is just completely Miriam does not know any of the design or any of the code. So this is just going to be a big surprise, and she's going to do the entire grid, hopefully, or at least whatever we can fit into this time span from scratch. So, live demos, no problem, right? There's no chance of anything going wrong.
Sure.
All
And
right.
you just sent me this. It looks like there's a lot in there, so we'll see what we get through.
There is a lot in there. Let's see. We're going to share the URLs for people at home to follow along with. Feel free to fork it and follow along, or just watch as we go. I'll share the design link first, and since the Figma link generated a really, really long string, I just shortened it real quick and have this bit.ly link, bit.ly/4ER, capital K, probably doesn't matter, MHF. So that should be the link to view the prototype design. I'm going to add this to the stage so we can see what you're looking at, Miriam. And then once we get going, I will share the CodePen link at the next stage, I suppose. But first, before we even jump into code, this is a chance. What we always do here at Oddbird is we look at these design proposals. We always call them like suggestions or proposals. We look at them together as a team and we talk through them, because what may have happened during the design process, may change a little bit once we get to the code. It's not always exactly pixel perfect. They're just suggestions. And if there's something that makes more sense when we implement it, then we have these conversations to make design decisions. So where do you want to start, Miriam?
Well, what's a fruipler?
A fruipler is a very fictional kitchen utensil. It's the world's, I think there's supposed to be an apostrophe there, most loved utensil to whip eggs.
I'm gonna run out and get one after this.
And it comes in a lot of colors and styles. And there's a lot of different variations of this product. So
sure,
this is our fun little fruipler that you cannot order, but I think we should maybe consider making one.
Yeah. So there's sort of two approaches I could take to this. One is sort of the outside in, get the rough layout, and then start working on the details. It also works pretty well to go inside out. I don't know if you have a preference there. I'm looking at this. So there's a footer way down here. It says footer way down here.
Yes.
I'm curious what happens when there's very little content on a page. Like
the footer stays at the bottom.
The footer stays at the bottom. I figured it might.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We can work on this. I will probably have more questions once I get into it. I'm imagining that. So we've got product information top of the sidebar here. Things are moving around a bit.
They do move around a bit. The tab order, I think, would stay roughly the same, because the form fields for selecting a color and then style have to be done in order for that product table. We're going to pretend a little bit today. That product table might not, it might show everything at first, or maybe it doesn't show anything. It doesn't really matter for this demo, but Once you select a
middle there.
color and a style, then only those options that are available in that color and a style will show there with their prices
Okay.
and whatever
I
else.
think something that might be a little difficult. I mean, the way that these things sort of go back and forth in terms of their ordering to get choose a style above product information here. Yeah, I'm just not sure because so I don't have I don't have a clean grid going across at each of these
Nope.
sections, right?
No, you do not.
Which means uh, what I would expect to do then, okay, I mean, I'm going to need a grid that sort of has 3 columns.
Yes.
I mean, I might give it extra side columns, um, depending how I want to treat that. I could either treat that as extra columns, which I would do if I want to be able to go into them at some point, or I can just sort of treat this as I have an overall width. It's not the full width of the page. I'll center it in the page. So either of those could work. Let's see. I'm definitely have some sort of grid line there and one down here for the footer. This is an interesting one. All right. So I'm going to say over here, I need to have some sense of, okay, there's grid line there. I've got my header taking up this area, these 2 cells in the grid. Probably I need something that's going to do that. And that's a grid cell I can ignore over on the other sides if I want. I mean, technically it'll go the whole way through, but it doesn't look like I'm using it anywhere except for over here. So the problem that I see with getting everything to sort of sort into the places is, I mean, maybe I would want masonry or something there. I'm not sure, because what I need to do is like slot things into grid cells, but then have those grid cells not line up, and I can't do that with grid. And the other option is that I sort of give them a wrapper, and I say like, well, these 2 things together are wrapped by something that goes in this big grid cell, and then they just flow in there. But if I don't have that wrapper, I can't flow multiple things into a single cell at this point. So I'm going to have a little bit of trouble with that, maybe.
See, part of this demo was a little bit selfish on on my part because I have a very similar layout, more or less, for a
Oh,
client
tricky.
right now. But like I didn't really pay closely attention to where I put things. So while I might have the luxury of like keeping some elements together and it might not move, there is a little bit of like this is over here on small screens, but then it goes under this thing. So there was a lot of different like grid cells and in using min content with like 1FR because
Right.
auto would just expand a row for me sometimes. So it was a little tricky, and I'm super curious to see how you either solve this or, like you said, if this isn't really going to work out,
Right. Where do I
that's when
move
we have that
this?
conversation of like, well,
Yeah.
what can we do? Is it okay if product information stays over on the left instead of always on the right or whatever?
Right. I found another grid line
Mhm.
there for popular recipes. Okay. So I'm gonna have to at some point deal with this center area and how do these things actually move. Um, I'm I'm guessing they're going to relate somehow to this main grid, right? Because they're relating to it at least in terms of the columns, but they're also going to have to be somewhat off the grid. Uh, Maybe I can get there with subgrid or something, because they're not aligning to the rows, but they are aligning to the columns. All right. And you sent me this code pen. which gives me, I've got, is this div demo?
We don't need the
wrapping
link
wall?
to the CSS.
Oh.
That was locally when I was originally coding it. So there we go. My bad.
That demo div that's wrapping the whole thing.
Well, it wasn't earlier, but now it is. I guess I forgot the closing div, but I think I added it since there.
Okay. Yeah, it looked like there was a closing div there. Okay, we already have a main. Yeah, I'm not even sure if I need that demo div, but I might use it here. I mean, it'll give me the quick way of saying, okay, I can center. I'm gonna say, let's start at the top here.
Yeah.
Was that ID demo, class demo?
Oh, you know what?
I'm gonna say that could be an ID. It really should only be used once, so why not? And I know some people are anti-ID, and I am not one of them. So we're going to say that the demo is a grid, and it has a max inline size of something. I don't really know what yet. I'm going to just sort of pick a value here. I don't know, 50 ems. I can come back and deal with that. I just want to know that I'm sort of, what am I going to need there? You know what? I'm going to get rid of that wrapper. I don't think I need it. I'm just going to put that on the body. I'm just going to say the body has that. So HTML, we've already got HTML here. Since we need the footer to stay, I'm going to say the HTML has a height, well, a block size of 100%. And the body has a min block size of 100%. So it can grow past, but if I did like, let's just, if I get rid of the footer, I want the footer to stay at the bottom. That min block size, if I give myself a grid layout, so I need a grid template. Just thinking as I'm typing here. Okay, so I need a grid template. The grid template is based on this. 3 main columns. Okay, and then nav, I'm going to call this nav header. Yeah, something. I don't know what that row is called. Yeah, main, we can't, an area can't go around. Well, maybe I just call this all main. Both of those rows. Side and footer, something like that. Let's make that template. It was 3 columns across, calling it nav, nav, nav. Oh, I mean, I guess I'm looking at the largest one here. But really, this is going to start from the smallest. Although with grid, it's sort of easy to switch them out. So I'm just going to finish what I started. That's going to have an auto height. Header.
Yeah, I think with grid, it's easier to go from the most complex layout because scaling it down to like when it's like single column, you just remove these
Right.
area names or condense them into 1 or 2.
Right.
columns.
And I mean, it's still, I don't know, mobile first in the end, in that I'm going to end up putting that in here. So we'll say when the page width is, I can do ranges now, right? When
Yeah.
the width is greater than, again, I don't know what my value there will be, but we'll go with something kind of small for now. So my grid template's going to go in that, even if I'm building it first. The header is going to be auto-sized just to fit around this stuff. If there's extra space, I'm going to put it in that main area. That's a decision that I have to make if I'm making the grid fit the whole page. There could be empty space somewhere. Where should it go? So, I mean, the other option here is to say, like, well, it could go at the top of the header, but I don't know that that really helps the design for this to expand and collapse.
No, I think also if we go to another page, maybe it would have too much header depending on the rest of the content. So I think
Exactly.
maybe keeping the headers somewhat consistent. Also, like if we think about the main area, if you don't include those recipes and you say main grows, then those recipes get pushed down right above the
Right.
footer, right? So we probably want to include that in main, and then we'll have another like pretty complex. Actually, the outer grid is the
Also,
simple one. The main area is going to be the more complex grid template, I think.
I wouldn't have to think of them as part of main. I could just say that that's the area that expands.
Oh, that that works as well. Yes.
Um, yeah, so extra space would go in there.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so I've got main across. That's going to be auto-sized. I'm going to actually have 2 rows of that. And then my, let's call it next. It seems like that's what it is. It's like next articles or something.
Well, isn't it only the last 2 columns? Well, I mean, I guess it depends.
Oh, you're right.
Otherwise, it's just all 1 column. I mean,
Right.
if everything spans all 3 columns, it could just be 1 unless you're using subgrid, right?
You're saying I could put the overall layout just in a, well, I need this to line up with that. So
Yeah. Okay.
I think it is
Since it's not
3
in main,
columns.
yes, it would be its.
Yeah. Okay, and that gets 1 fraction because that's going to take the extra space. Auto is going to fit to the things that I've got in there, the content, and then 1 fraction. 1 fraction is the same as min-max auto 1 fraction. So it's still not going to get smaller than the content. I can just say 1 fraction. And then I've got I would say it's useful to have the 3 columns, even if I was doing this, if I'm lining things up inside of it. But you're right, it would be subgrid then potentially to actually line the things up inside. All right, and that last one, that footer is also auto. And footer way down here. Right, things aren't in their places yet.
Also, do you need the width or is it just assumed is 100% if you don't add it? Like the row or the column size.
I do need it.
Okay.
So those don't look like equal columns.
No, they're not.
What they're getting their sizing from. So this one,
It's that table that's a pain in the butt. Let's just pretend that this is a real project and that table has to I prefer it not to shift when you make different selections. So we're going to set that. I mean, I would recommend setting that middle column as a somewhat more fixed width column. And the outer 2 can take up remaining space.
Outer can take up remaining space. That seems a little bit, well, okay, we've got an overall width set, so it's not too risky. Because I felt like otherwise, you know, this center column stays set. It clearly this side, the choose a style, it's staying smaller than this one.
Yes.
And if we didn't have an outer width on things, that would just grow indefinitely and that would seem awkward. But okay, since we've got a limit on it, we can say
It can grow with the page. It can be flexible with the page, but like that middle column should stay the same regardless of the selection that you make. So if the content in the table
oh,
expands
right,
in the like
the table
size
changing.
or the name, or if it's like really expensive and there's like 8 digits there.
Right. Okay. So we're going to say that this is, yeah, what if I haven't given myself enough space there. And part of the reason I'm not really worrying about what values I'm giving these things right from the start is because I want us to be able to change it later or adjust it, and I want my design to not rely on these specific numbers. So I want to be able to just go in and mess with them, and everything else moves and works. That's part of my goal of doing a layout is yeah, sort of doesn't matter which magic numbers I use. I'm not relying on them for the magic. Everything should be fluid inside of that number.
I'm going to ask you what I know the people are asking
Uh-huh.
is if that header color, background color goes full width, how do you
Oh,
account for that?
right. It does go
That's
full
what the
width.
people are asking.
The people are clever. Okay.
The content should be constrained to a max, but
Yeah. Okay, so that means I do want these to be columns. Um, instead of having that max inline size, I will get that from, I'm going to call this, yeah, what am I going to call that one down the side?
if you call it start and the automatic keywords are dash start
Oh,
or
right.
dash
That's
end, is
probably
that start
start,
dash
start.
start?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's maybe not. Uh, we'll just left margin and right margin. It's not like, yeah.
Inline margin start. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of doesn't matter. These names are just for us as developers. It's not actually doing something. So, okay. So now we actually do want those to be reliably one fraction each. They take up all the remaining space, which means we can sort of say what is the min and the max for each of our content columns, which actually, I mean, we could use like fit content or something here. If we don't want it to grow, that has a dash in it. Fit content.
Yeah, I don't want that image to get too big,
Right.
I suppose. I don't have a specific number for it, so.
Right. And then we can sort of say what our fit content takes a maximum then. So I'm just going through the columns here after the slash. So the left margin is that one fraction. Then I've got a column that's fitting the content. And then I've got one that's consistently, I mean, I maybe want a way for it to shrink a bit. So I'm going to say min max. I don't know if I want auto here or min content, maybe min content. Whoop. Min content is the smallest the content will go. And then we're, again, picking a number. And then this is more like fit content 15ems. So fit content says grow up to either this point or the maximum size of the content, but don't keep growing after the content has already reached its maximum. There's no point getting larger. And then we need a fraction on the other side. Is that right? So
It's hard to see without the grid areas assigned to the elements.
yes. So what are the names of the things? Is it just the
I don't remember.
we've got header? So
Main, header, main.
actually, yeah, okay.
So
Header.
are they both assigned to the header? I mean, we could split it out and have nav as its own thing and header is just the
That's
headline
all
or something.
because we've got that yellow background around it. Oh, right. You're saying because
For
right
the
now the
grid
way,
area.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Why don't I just say I'm going to keep it like this, and I'm going to say the header. I sometimes use there is a shorthand grid area. I'm going to use that other places. Here, because I'm not sticking strictly to those areas, I'm going to do columns and rows separately, just because it's going to be easier to read.
And
So
that's
grid
because of
columns.
the left margin and the right margin.
Yeah, the left margin and the right margin, and the fact that nav is actually inside of header, and I'm going to use subgrid for that.
Okay. Ooh.
So the columns, I'm actually just going from 1 to -1. And those have names, but I know I just want to go the whole way across. So if I change the names, I don't want to worry about it. That's just going to always go the whole way across. And here I'm going to say the grid row is from nav to header. And that is what I want. I want it to go the whole way across, and I want it to cover the nav and header rows. So we've got that. And then main also has to cover 2 rows, but those rows are both named main. So I can just say grid area main. And I'm again going to hide some of this just so that I can see that the footer sticks to the bottom.
There's a pro troubleshooting tip for everyone.
Yeah.
Boom.
It's not sticking to the bottom. So I've got some issue there with...
Have we assigned foot yet?
Oh, no, of course.
Okay.
So what is the...
Footer and foot. I believe.
what is
The
the other thing?
section is I put it in a section element is the 2 articles.
Yeah. I'm not going to trust that all sections are going to be that. So I'm going to call this the next up section. Yeah, and so we might have a component that's sort of next up and could go anywhere, but I'm assuming that in this layout there's, I mean, and maybe I want to name it something that could take anything. It's or we have got a component of popular recipes and we could put it anywhere, but we've also got a next up section that's in our layout. So any page might have something in the next up. And that's where I feel safe giving an ID. It's part of the layout. It's not a component that I'm moving around inside of the layout. That's how I'm going to treat this. Next up is in the, did I call it? next.
Foot. Oh, wait.
It's in
Next. Yeah,
and then
sorry.
footers and foot. Yeah. So grid area next. Footer. And again, with header and footer, I probably want something like body footer, body header, because those are things that might be reused. I could also give them IDs. I could decide how I want to do that. I mean, this could also be body section if I feel like I can rely on that. That's going to depend on some other things in the site, how other pages are going to work. But we've got options here for selectors that are meaningful. Grid area, foot. Hey, it's all the way down there, which is where we wanted it. Way down there. All right, we can inspect and see the grid. There it is. There's our grid. There's no content in those side areas. And so because we used fit content and it's not growing past the content, those are staying entirely collapsed. But they'll get filled in as we put content in there. And, you know, we're falling back to just not much at this point. Because things are going to their rows and columns, their areas, it's sort of giving us an implicit grid, trying to figure out what those are. But we can come in here and fill in at the different sizes. We can just give it a different template. Clearly, that break is going to be much larger before we want to go to that layout. It seems more accurate. Let's just throw in our grid template for small screens. I'm going to skip over the medium-sized screens for now.
Yeah, I don't think we have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Grid part 3.
Yeah. For small screens, I'm just going to take these same ideas, but this time I just need a single column, and I just need the same names so that I can keep those grid areas set the same. And I'm only in my template moving them around. I don't have to actually change what's assigned where in my code. I only change where those assignments go to. Does that make sense? So I'm going to need the sizing on these.
Well, I guess if I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. Would we still need that left and right margin, or are we going to handle that with padding? Because otherwise, everything was flush to the edge.
Yeah, maybe I might as well leave it. And I'll just make it small.
Yeah, exactly.
So we called that LM. We called that RM. We're going to say that is. I've been playing with different approaches to sort of gap spacing. Let's not spend too much time on it, though. We'll just say 1M for now. We could put that in a variable and come back to it, but we're not going to have time to come back to it. So we'll just say that's that, and the center is 1 fraction. So there's our small screen, and yeah, they're not much different at this point in how they look. That's fine. They are different in terms of the actual grid. Yeah, so there we get some new columns that sort of just appear out of the side. Great. Actually, at the smaller size, I guess at both of them, we want some sort of gap, right, between things. Like there's definitely gap between rows and columns.
Yes.
So let's just put that in, and let's say that that's staying fairly consistent throughout. And we'll call it 1M for now. And again, that's something we can come back, we can add a variable, we can change it. Okay, so inside of my header, and while I'm doing a production project, I might spend time thinking about like what are the selectors that I want, but I might actually wait until I have something that's working, because why bother finessing selectors before I know that my approach is going to stick? I might be changing a lot of things. So, I'm using nesting here. It works on my browser. It's fine for figuring it out. And then I might come back and say, well, okay, we have to support more browsers farther back. I'm going to pre-process this with SAS or something to get rid of that nesting, or I'm just going to take it out manually or whatever. But I will often just do my initial layout with real rough selectors and real rough sort of attention to what's supported where. I don't care. I'll solve it later. That's the finessing step. But so now we have a header, and inside of it, we want it to be a grid. So we're going to say you're also a grid. And it's going to be a subgrid. Now, I could show, since we're talking about grids, maybe I'll show the fallback there. What's it going to be? I mean, it's going to be, I need those 2 rows. They're auto rows, though. That's not going to matter. What's going to matter is those. I'm going to want to, so grid, can I just say grid template subgrid? I mean, subgrid is a value for rows and columns. I might need.
I thought you had to do both, but maybe I definitely never have done that with the slash.
That did it.
Oh, excellent.
So, I mean, grid template is a shorthand for rows and columns. So it seemed to do. But then what I can do for a fallback, say that's going to be ignored. And in that case, I need a, I want to, which is first here. So first I'm talking about a row at a time. So rows first, I want to, yeah, I don't want to inherit that, but I do want basically that. So maybe I would put that into a variable that both use so that I can get it more easily. But then for the definition across, I do just want it to be the subgrid. And really, yeah, I'm going to have 2 of these. So I'm going to have the nav across. Did that give me the grid that I want? Things are not in their places. Inside of that header, I have what?
Starts with the logo, and then there's a nav, yeah, and then it goes
Logo.
H1, H2. So we'll probably need some wrapping elements.
So actually, here I want like logo.
Yeah.
Nav.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I don't know if I do. We'll see. Okay. nav frupler, some, yeah. Okay. H group doesn't do anything, but it is a thing. It exists.
But it's not semantically meaningful?
It's not
Is that what you
semantically
mean?
meaningful, but it's meaningful to me.
Right.
I know what an H group is. So here I go. And I'm going to say that means I can target my H group in the header. And actually, oh, where's that image from?
What do you mean? Oh, that's in the
It's
main.
actually in the content.
Yes.
Oh.
I mean, it doesn't have to be,
Oh.
but I didn't know if you wanted to do either like a negative margin or do something else with the
Right.
grid template. So there's like a number of things we could do with this.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to, I would want it related to those grid areas. I mean, I'm just worried if I go with a negative margin, uh, I just have to pick a random number, a magic number for it.
Would that whole left column there be a grid area at the widest sizes?
Yeah, but then I need, I can't have these things if they're sort of their own box that I'm placing into the grid. I don't know how I'm going to intermingle them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. So
Uh,
if there's like one container for all of those, one like outer container for all those, it's going to be impossible at smaller sizes to put the product information block in the middle of
right.
that. So either they have to be separate grid cells, which, so if, yeah, because if the image, it can fill up multiple rows, but there's still going to be some gaps. If the because the bottom two could be in their own container, but they're going to be at the mercy of where do we line that up against on a row.
Yeah, and in these different things, the things are in different groupings. So as much as I can, I'm hoping to keep the things in the main area sort of siblings of each other that I can uh, place in different columns at different sizes. Um, so I think I would really like to have that image in the header because to me, that's what it's hanging off of. There's nothing else creating this line. This line only exists as the bottom of the
Yes.
image. And it seems like it's aligning. Oh, it's aligning at the top with. So I'm not going to say, like, I don't need a line there. I don't think I need a grid line there, but I do need to pay attention to that alignment. And what I think that means is that this is all padding. So I've got a grid area with some padding at the top. The image and the header group sit against that padding. And then the size of the image creates this line. And that line is going to be important in the next chunk, which is intriguing.
What's our code right now? Our grid. We have header. So we didn't do anything with the image. We're not.
Yeah, although we could here say
image and right under it, image instead of main.
but we can't do something along an L. So
It's not, is it?
well, so if we
It's just
change
expanding
this,
2 rows.
if we change this, now main goes around a corner.
Oh,
See that?
yeah, because we have 2 rows of main.
So I'm just considering that part of main and images just
Image
gonna
will
go into it.
extend into
Sort of in
main.
the same way that
Yeah.
I actually made my header go across both nav and header.
Yes. Yep.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this fallback, but hopefully you can see the idea here. I'm for fancy new browsers, I can just ask for the subgrid.
Not
And
even
for
that
older
new.
browsers,
It's really well
not even,
supported.
yeah. For older browsers, I just sort of have to recreate parts of that parent grid. Instead of doing that, let's just take it out for now. But I would want to spend more time on making sure that I've got that fallback working the way I want.
Does inherit work with subgrid? Could that be a fallback, or does that not inherit the grid template at all?
Sorry, say that again.
The keyword inherit, can you use that as
Oh.
opposed to rewriting the grid?
Yeah, I could inherit in a lot of cases, but right now it looks to me like I'd be inheriting way more than I want, right? I'm
Okay.
inheriting a bunch of row definitions. And really, I only need 2 of those rows. And so there's a lot of situations where I would inherit as the fallback. And this, I don't think, is one of them, unless I approached things a little bit differently from the start.
Each group.
Okay.
Are we going to assign a column?
Look at our small screen. I'm curious why that's printing way over there.
Because the nav
Header.
isn't in a area, is it?
Nav isn't in an area. You're right.
Because it's in the header.
You're right. Grid area nav.
It's so much harder, like inspecting code that I don't get to like click on. So I just have to
The nav is
remember what
also
we've done.
inside. Oh, it's because I've got that subgrid. It's in the subgrid. It's getting pushed around. So grid area header head it.
That's better.
Okay. Right. We're going to need that image in a figure. And so now I'm thinking of it more like a hero image almost. Yeah, okay. So now our figure inside of there also has its place to go. Grid area image, is that what I called it?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, I guess.
Do we have to say what grid row it extends to?
Yes, so that it goes down through.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I find it a little simpler to read splitting these apart when I'm doing something like that. So the grid column is image.
Oh, you're not type. Oh, there it is. Never mind.
The grid row is image, but then span 2.
Yeah, because we can't say on main because there's 2 more
Right.
rows of main. So it's only the first row of main.
And I assume it is actually spanning that, even though, how come here we go. There's our subgrid. Oh, no, it's in the subgrid. So that header, yeah, we've got a bigger problem here. And we're not gonna get this done.
No.
But it's an interesting problem. So in order for that image to be in the header has to come down into this area, and then the main and the header overlap in that area, which we could do.
That's because of the background color, right?
Right. And like if this figure is inside of the header and the header doesn't expand down into that area, then that figure doesn't have access to it either.
Can
Now,
the
the other way
figure
we
be in
could
the
solve that,
main and expand up?
well, it could be a sibling of those, and then it can fit
Oh,
into either, right? So we could say the the body figure is in grid column image and spans 2, and now I think we should get what we want there. On this grid, our figure spans 2, and we're going to that's not what I want. I want, okay, here's where we get to the alignment things that confuse everybody. Align does the cross axis of text. That's what I want. I'm saying that I want to align self and so it sits at the bottom there. And I think this is also telling me that I want more overlap than that. So I don't really want this to be auto. I want this to be some amount of overlap that I always get. So that could be like 3M or whatever I want it to be. I can say how much overlap do I want there. I mean, so that's one way of going about it. I mean, now I don't have the alignment to the top. I don't know that I'm going to be able to always overflow. Well, I could do it by making the aspect ratio not consistent on the image, if we're okay with that. I guess that's a question for the designer. Because if this aspect ratio is always the same, then I either align it at the top or the bottom, but the aspect ratio is going to determine how much overflow I get there. Because when that image gets smaller, it's not going to overflow. Does that make sense?
right. I kept the same aspect ratio on all the designs.
Right.
Because this is a fictional image, it doesn't really matter to me. In the real world, I was also thinking maybe it can be cut out, which would be great, except for that's not very practical in the real world for people doing
Yeah,
websites.
yeah.
Because if it was cut out, it wouldn't really matter where it's placed. I also don't think it matters to line up to the heading necessarily. I think what makes this stand out is that it does extend down. So I am okay
You're
with
okay
it.
with that.
Well, not exactly that, but yeah, the idea of that.
Not exactly that? So
Not
what
a,
would you
well, I don't want it. Maybe I don't want it to get so much smaller than, but that's really the column width that we have set.
right. So you're saying that this should maybe be a
A little,
min-max.
yeah.
So it only goes, say, 15 to 20 ems or something like that. Or, I mean, we can even use pixel sizes here if we want to. We can do what we want, but
Yeah.
there's sort of the, oh, right. I don't have a place for the image in my small screen layout. That's why it's jumping. In the small screen layout, it goes after the header.
Yes.
Oh, still overlapping. Interesting. Okay. So there, it's not overlapping. To get the overlap, we need to, on small screens, make sure that the header still spans into that image space.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, wow. You
I thought
really
I
have
was
made
making it
this
easy.
simple.
Like, oh, I was like, oh, we'll zoom through this, and then now I'm seeing it. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, there's just a lot
Darn
going on here,
designers.
but it's a fun little problem to solve. I mean, so another way that we could simplify this is we could take the yellow off of the header. I don't know where that's being applied.
Right there.
Yeah, there. we could remove that and instead say we've got like body and before, no content, just a background, and it is on the grid. Grid column 1 to -1. It's going the whole way across. Grid area or grid row. Span 3. I don't remember what it needs to be. Oh, I need it to start at the top. So I could do something here where I'm just moving this background around separately from the pieces, and then I don't have to think so much about like, well, am I overflowing the header? Am I not overflowing the header? Just keep that background separate from it. So I might go with this solution.
I like this better too. Then then you don't have to worry about what's grouped where.
Yeah, and
And
it
how
probably
to
goes to image. Image is going down into main. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I think that's getting us on the right track. Here, an hour into our work.
We got a header. Well, hey, this was, an optimistic designer's project
Yeah,
here.
I think that's working pretty well, right?
I
I mean,
do. I agree.
there's a few things that I could note here. So, like, if I were to start playing with that nav, that nav is in here. I'm probably not going to use grid for the nav. The navigation, it doesn't look to me like it's trying to. I don't know. There's not like a layout that I care about. There's an alignment that I care about. There's a way of the thing spacing. And so Flexbox is going to get me that. So I can say that I want to justify this, justify content to the end. I mean, I need to make it a flex, display, flex. Yeah, I mean, if I look at that nav, it's not like I could name the areas and or be like, yeah, what is a grid layout that these things go into? It's just like I need them to space themselves. I have some sort of issue.
Flex end. Doesn't like end. Which we use way lower down. Yeah, I don't know why the
Yeah, that error showed up at the wrong place.
there we go.
Just about okay. I haven't.
I
Seen
always
that
see
before.
that. I see it all the time, and all the linters is like, no,
Oh,
gotta
you
have
know what?
flex.
Maybe it's because this is set to SAS as a preprocessor,
Yes, it is.
and I don't generally have that set, and I wonder if that's why I don't get the.
Ah.
Oh no, it's still showing it. All right. Well, either way.
Well, you might be getting another error if you because I nested things lower in this file probably
Yeah, that
knowing
could be
it was well, plus I have mixins on the bottom, so you need SAS here.
right.
For it to
And
not
it
have an
could
error.
be, I want that aligned to the end. I mean, I want space between things, but I don't know that I actually do. I think, sometimes with navigation, it's nicer to have a little extra space for clicking. So instead of putting, I mean, I might put a gap in there, just a small gap. But then really it's going to be the nav links.
I don't think you want the point after the number.
Oh, you don't know me.
That's better.
And then these can get some padding of something. So some of the spacing between them is gaps, but some of it is just extra click target on on the links.
Now, any link is fairly, I would say, new, at least public
Yeah.
knowledge. Do you want to explain what that is?
Let's just see what our support is here. So, kind of new, but global 99%, that's pretty good. Any link is like saying link visited. I think that's the whole thing. It's just shorthand for doing the link and visited pseudo classes. So yeah, a link whether or not it's been visited.
Gotcha.
Those would be the same. But I like any link. Yeah. I think we're basically at time. I don't know if there's any other particular things you wanted to talk through here. I mean, like one thing we didn't get to, this I would have done as an auto grid, right? So
Autofill or fit?
it looks to me,
I'd have to try
I mean,
both and see which ones make sense.
I would auto fit. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's a mnemonic that actually works, but in my mind, it's something like, well, I want the things to fit the box. So auto fit. Autofill fills the box with rows, and it ignores what things are there. Autofit fits the things in the box. And usually I want autofit. I don't know if I've ever run into a situation where I wanted autofill.
Oh, interesting. I probably have tried both on every time I use it, and I don't know if I always end up with fit or fill or if I've gone
Right.
back and forth. Now I really want to pay attention now when I use that.
Yeah. So there I would auto fit and I would give them a size. It looks like they don't expand. I mean, they stay a square.
Mhm.
They don't expand to fit the space. So I'm still using, oh, yeah, okay. Right. So the columns have a max. So it's auto fit with a minimum and a maximum size. Instead of being the maximum of one fraction is often what I'll do if I'm actually trying to expand to fill it in. Yeah, this looks like it's right at the point where it's almost ready to slot in the next one. Yeah, I still don't know how I'm solving the main content problem. I mean, it's probably some combination of subgrid, or yeah, subgrid to get the columns, but then I don't want the rows to line up. So, I mean, it really is almost a masonry sort of thing. Except I'm not looking for that auto placement masonry. I'm just looking for that, like, I have columns and then I don't have rows. I want
Mhm.
um,
You want things to
want that.
flow in the column, but still like
Yeah.
have a place.
The other
Yeah.
thing that I might be able to do is put wrappers in that are just divs. That I put those wrapped boxes into places, and then inside of those, I'm not creating. I have separate rows, and then as long as I don't need to move things around too much, I can do display contents on those divs to make them go away at places where I don't want them. So like if I don't want them at one size, but I do want them at another size, divs are one of the things that is safe to put display contents on. So yeah, I could throw in some wrapper divs that are useful just some of the time. Yeah, I hope that was useful, even though we didn't make it the whole way through.
I think so. I think it was very useful, and from the feedback I've received, I think it helped a lot of people. And I would love it if anyone who watches this let us know if you want to see us move forward and do more of this grid layout. We can certainly follow up on another CSS Grid Part 3 episode, perhaps. But we need to hear from you to make sure that's something you would be interested in.
Or if you want to take a stab at it,
Yeah, that would be great. send us your submission. If you want to finish this layout, we'd love to see how everyone finds a solution for it. And like I said in the beginning, everything's like subject to change. It doesn't have to stay exactly in this order. These are design suggestions. So if we need to change something by moving like the choose the style above color, because then you can keep that color and the like table block together, and style could go above it. That would be a much easier fix than trying to like push it in between at certain screen sizes. But would love to see how people come up with their own solutions.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap this up. If you want to learn how to write resilient and maintainable CSS, Miriam Suzanne's next workshop is coming up starting October 14th. To get tickets or to read more about it, go to oddbird.net/talks on the screen there for more info. Please visit oddbird.net/wingingit to access links from the show. We'll have show notes. Really, the only links are the CodePen demo and the Figma file. So feel free to go check those out or see our full archive of Winging It shows. If you'd like to support us, please like and subscribe. If you want more of Oddbird, we invite you to check out our newsletter at oddbird.net/oddnews. Thank you. And remember, best practice is a conversation. So let's keep talking.
Excellent. Thank you.